quick since the last one. It doesn't always feel like that. So before we start, we will, as we always do, introduce ourselves, because people online can't always see who's in the room, and vice versa. Can you all please put your cameras on if you're at home and you're taking part in the meeting? Thank you. Right, so I'll start with myself and Councillor Mary Jones. I'm the convener of this panel. I'll go that way.
Liz Jordan, Scrutiny Officer.
And good morning, and my name is Councillor Michael Locke, representing Scetty Ward.
And to my right, what's up with you, Paul?
Is it the red one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Mark Barber, Nature Recovery Team Leader and Principal Officer.
Councillor Andrew Stevens, Cabinet Member for Environment and Infrastructure.
Councillor Andrew Williams, Cabinet Member for Corporate Services.
Carol Morgan, Head of Housing and Public Health.
Morning, Tom Price. I'm the Divisional EHO for Pollution Control, Private Sector Housing and Building Control.
Morning, Adrian Johnson, Team Leader for Pollution Control and Public Health.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go round on screen, and the first person I can see is Sarah.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Sarah Keaton for West Cross.
Bridget.
Morning all, Bridget Rowlands, Councillor for Clydach Ward.
Oh, Mike, you with us?
Yeah, Borodar, good morning, Mike Day from Scetty Ward.
Sorry, Adam.
Councillor Adam Davis, Shuka Ward.
Do I know it's Deb there? Next, Deb.
Hello, Deborah Hill, Nature Recovery Team Leader, Job Sharing with Mark Barber.
Will.
Councillor Will Thomas, Mumbles.
And Oliver.
Good morning, Councillor Oliver James for Carket Ward.
Okay, thank you all very much. So we'll get into the meeting proper now. We've got apologies for absence.
Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Chris Evans.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is disclosure of personal and prejudicial interest. Are there any? There's only Michael in the room. Anybody online? Okay, thank you. Any officers, I should say, as well. Next item is prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. And the next item is the minutes of the previous meeting, starting pages 1 to 4. Those of you that were there, do you agree that they're correct? Yes, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the letters, which I'm sure you've all read, and any responses. Okay, and the next item is public question time. Have we had any public questions, Liz?
No public questions received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we're on to item 7. This is going well till we get to the questions. And it's Section 6 Biodiversity and Resilience of Ecosystems Duty Action Plan and the Progress of Work. I'm not reading it all out anymore. So we have Councillor Andrew Stevens here, and we also have, I've got to remember now, Paul and Mark. Okay, so do you want to say a few words first, Andrew?
Yes, yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to introduce the report. I won't go into it too much in depth. I'm sure all members have read it. So the report sets out how we are meeting our Section 6 duty under the Environment Wales Act 2016. So this duty is to maintain and enhance biodiversity and to improve the resilience of ecosystems. I think the report does show practical work happening on the ground, Chair, across a wide range of services, and it also shows where we need to keep building on that progress. Most actions are rated green, which is certainly very encouraging, and it does show that nature recovery is being built firmly into the way we work. It also keeps our work aligned with a wider nature recovery priorities and our corporate commitments, which is certainly important because it has to run through everything that we do. And if you don't mind, Chair, I did just want to mention a couple of projects. the recent hedge laying work that was carried out via our nature conservation teams and an outstanding local contractor in Mal Williams and his team. This is a very practical example of nature recovery on the ground and bringing in the traditional style rural craft to a predominantly urban area, and something I'd like to see more of, Chair. And as Councillor Keaton is all too familiar with the work that's just been done in West Cross, as she did play a pivotal role in bringing that forward. I think the new hedge there is by the playground opposite the shops, which is listed as a Gower style flying hedge, has been extremely well received, and it's opened the outstanding view back up to the residents and the businesses there. And it's again, it really shows just how traditional skills can improve habitats and the look of an area at the same time. Another thing, I know we're going to keep on the topic of the hedges, but there was in Melin Mynach, there were some outstanding workshops that carried out by the team and the contractors, which had an excellent take up from residents, all again keen to learn this traditional countryside skill that unfortunately is slowly disappearing. These, among others, are a great example of not just us talking about biodiversity, but doing hands-on work that strengthens habitats, keeps heritage skills alive, and gets people directly involved. So I do want to put on record thanks to Mark and Paul by the side of me for such a comprehensive report, and Deb for all her work, and the wider team right across nature conservation, parks, highways, and the wider council who are helping deliver these projects across Swansea, Chair. So I'm happy if there's any additional input. I'm happy.
Thank you, Andrew. And yes, as you said, it was a very comprehensive report. Thank you. Took a bit of reading. Do you want to add anything, Paul or Mark?
If I could, Chair, just possibly just as a little bit of context, which would help lead into the questions that are coming up in terms of the setup within the nature recovery team. I think many of you will know Deb Hill's been the leader for many years, but I think as she hinted at the introduction, she's taking flexi retirement now, so shares the role with Mark Barber here jointly as team leader. There's currently 8 staff within the team. 5 are permanent, 3 are temporary, reliant on grants. They are all qualified professional officers, but they are committed in terms of getting their hands dirty. But I think they live and breathe the natural environment 24/7, really, in terms of their work they do in their own time, in evenings and weekends. Some of them are about on site today. We have the environment officer and the community green space officer that I think they're planting around Singleton Boatkin Lake today, doing some work there after doing some desilting earlier this year. We've got also the team is helped 1 day a week by the project officer based in the Countryside Centre, Karen Jones, you may know her. She's out today at Pentre Havard School planting trees with the school. So they mix. They're out and about on site a lot, but yeah, heavily reliant on those services, heavily reliant on grants, a lot of which just wash through the council in terms of delivery of projects on the ground.
Thank you, and it's very nice to have a dedicated team. I mean, we had a little trouble, I remember, even getting as far as the Section 6, so at least we're now working on it, so it's very good. Did you want to add anything, Mark? Okay, thanks. So in that case, we'll go straight to the questions. And strangely enough, you said nearly all green, and I've managed to find one that's amber. Well, not for me personally. What are the main reasons some actions in the 2023 to 25 plan were only rated amber, and how will these be improved in the next cycle? I'm not sure who's answering it. Is it you? It's Mark, is it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So, yeah, so some of the actions were rated amber mainly because of just delivery taking longer than expected on some of the items, like unexpected things coming along, whether it's reports taking longer than planned or management plans. Some of them also related to kind of internal staff training, where we had kind of low uptake of the kind of online modules, where we're looking at trying to implement different ways of undertaking that work. Importantly, amber doesn't necessarily mean failure, so none of the actions were rated red, and around 3/4, like we've already said, were green. So we're very pleased with what was achieved, considering how much was done. You know, as you can say, it's a big long report, and in the next cycle, we're looking at refining and streamlining our actions, improving monitoring, and also focusing on being realistic about timescales and capacity.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Andrew.
I just want to add, Chair, as well as you have to give us something to aim for as well. So if we were all green, then we'd have no need to be calling us here to scrutiny. And you know how much I enjoy these climate change scrutiny sessions, Chair. So.
I might not be so nice in the next meeting if you're here. Well done. I just realised I got Andrew and Andrew. So I'll have to actually use your title now. Okay, so the next 3 questions are from Councillor Mike Day. Mike, just go off one after the other. I won't call you on in each time. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we all welcome the progress that's being made, and I think you know, such an important aspect of the council's work, isn't it, in terms of creating this opportunity for us to move forward in this area. You know, clearly, you know, the issues of climate change and so on go way beyond us, but you know, we have an important role to play. And one of the things that just wanted to kind of look at for a moment was that in the risks and issues paragraph 8 on page 11, there's a mention which says some actions also require long-term investment and collaboration across multiple service areas. So I just wanted to ask, you know, how you think the council can be addressing the lack of coordination across departments that may be possibly limiting the biodiversity work. And I'll come back with the other questions later then.
Sorry, Andrew, yes.
Yeah, so thanks, Chair. I'll come on this one and welcome if, you know, if Mark wants to come in to pick up any points perhaps that I miss. I don't necessarily think there is a lack of coordination, although as with anything, you know, we can do more. Certainly, we certainly strive to do more where we can. But I don't think it's a case of lack of coordination. I mean, there's excellent work being done with active travel and the biodiversity improvements around with that, which is highways, the rain gardens. I mean, the highways has done a huge amount with the SUD schemes. I mean, the scheme in Sandfields is a strong example. With the rain gardens that are aiming to tackleise local flooding by also improving the public realm, improving biodiversity with the planting choices and stuff that's that goes along with that. So, and around St Helens Primary School is another classic example, which I believe was award winning. All this is collaborative work that I'm seeing, but in order to pick up any potential gaps that we are trying to address this through a new Climate and Nature Champions initiative, which was just recently launched, which is encouraging staff across the services to lead small practical projects in their own areas and share learning more widely, Chair. And I don't know if there's anything else that perhaps I missed.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and also in terms of oversight, we've got some mechanisms in place. We've got there's a climate change and nature recovery program board, so we link up with the council's climate change team, but that's groups of officers, representatives from various departments with an interest in climate change and nature recovery, which we discuss the various ongoing projects with. Those projects are RAG rated. Those that are perhaps amber or red are then referred up to a steering group, which includes the cabinet members, and we discuss those. There's also report's taken then on to Service Transformation Committee as a Climate Change Nature Recovery Service Transformation Committee, which has oversight of that. So yeah, so behind the scenes, there's a more joined up approach. Those meetings happen every couple of months or quarterly. And you know, the Director of Place also will attend those. So it's a significant improvement on where we were a few years ago.
Thank you. I think you know, we're not necessarily saying that there is a lack of coordination. What we're saying is, you know, how can we be moving that forward? And pleasing to hear, you know, the introduction, for example, of the champions, which will no doubtedly help. If I can just move on to a specific area, and that is of planning. Pleasing to see in paragraph 3.1.7 of the report on page 26 that planning decisions must maintain and enhance biodiversity, etc. How is that being done? I could see that the report does talk about planning ecologists being consulted on all planning applications, and some applications being turned down because of issues relating to biodiversity. Is there anything else that could or should be undertaken within this area of planning, which is quite important, isn't it? Because it's not just simply a question of what is going there, but you know, how the work is going to be undertaken as well, and the potential impact and damage upon the biodiversity environment. So I just wondered if there's anything further that needed to be done within the planning area to ensure that that area is providing support for our biodiversity aspirations.
Who wants to answer this one?
Thank you for the question. So, so I think at the minute we're doing everything we can in terms of from a legal point of view when it comes to planning and biodiversity. So it's embedded in several practical ways. We've got our planning ecologists, which consult on all of the applications that could affect designated sites, protected species, or priority habitats. And all applications are actively screened by the ecologists, so none are missed. Officers also use the supplementary planning guidance, so the biodiversity and development one, including checklists to help decide if ecological surveys are required. And then just recently, in accordance with the updated national planning policy, there are these green infrastructure statements which are required to ensure developments provide this new kind of net benefit for biodiversity. And where necessary, applications have been refused because of a lack of information or these GI statements, and also connected to invasive species, you know, conditions are routinely applied. And then also further to that, there's the replacement local development plan where nature recovery is being implemented, and then also this will connect to the candidate sites being assessed for ecological impacts and for opportunities to deliver this net benefit for biodiversity.
Did you want to say anything, Andrew? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, and it's obviously going to be a challenge, isn't it, when I think the reference was made earlier on to within legal constraints. So yeah, thanks for that. I was pleased to see the references to the engagement with friends groups, and you talk about bulbs being given, some extensive work being undertaken at Morriston Park, Duck Pond, for example, in coordination with the friends groups. One of the concerns that I have in connection with that is how is that work being coordinated? Is there somebody responsible within the team for linking with the different friends groups and coming up with an overall strategy as to how friends groups can support the work that's going on? Because and I think it also links in with our role as councillors, doesn't it? Because I think many of us are involved in either direct or indirectly ways of supporting the friends groups. So I just wondered whether, from an officer point of view, there is anybody with a specific role to kind of coordinate the work of the friends groups, and whether there's an overall strategy for ways in which they can be partnering more strongly with the council in our biodiversity aims.
Okay, who's taking this, Paul? By the way, I am a member of a friends group, but it's so generic, I'm not going to.
So I think whilst we don't coordinate, we work closely with the community partnership and destination development team and they're the main support for the friends of groups. But we have offered all friends of groups and funding for tools this past year, and to help them with biodiversity based projects this 26-27 year. We also give them advice on how to make their green spaces more biodiverse. But obviously there's more we could do if there's some more resources available. But yeah.
You want to say something, Andrew? Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thanks, Chair. And on that point, and just to pick out a very good example that relatively recently was in Golden Grove, where well, we rely as well, partly on third sector and other partners as well, such as the Orchard Project. And a really good local example recently was Golden Grove, where we planted a community orchard, and that had some excellent cross collaboration between Pengelly Primary School, the Friends of Golden Grove Park, local ward members, as well as our tree services, someone from our nature conservation team, the community development team, and a parks officer as well, to really ensure that project was a success. So yeah, and I'm sure there's it's a fine, is it, Chair? Yeah, so and there are, I'm sure there's another whole host of other examples as was outlined in the report. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds very interesting. I don't know if we can perhaps have some details of that. It would be interesting to share, I think. So, Mike, did you want to say anything?
No. Just thank you for the answer. I just wondered if the friends groups would be aware of who to contact if they did want to follow up, for example, upon the funding that has been made available for tools or specific biodiversity projects. If there's a named officer, or whether there's a generic contact point that they could touch base with.
Yes, Mark.
So yeah, Gemma Bevan in the department we just mentioned, she is the main contact, and she has a mailing list for all of the Friends of groups. So she contacts them on a regular basis, offering opportunities, and we're connected in through her.
Sorry, what was her name?
Gemma Bevan.
Okay, thank you. Right, the next questions is from Michael, and he's also going to ask 6 as Chris isn't here. So it's over to you.
Right. My question is, how dependent are we on external funding for biodiversity projects, and what risk does this create for long-term delivery?
Thank you. Yes, so in answer to this one, so we're currently very dependent on external funding, particularly the non-competitive Welsh Government grants. So we've got the main one we get is the Local Place for Nature grant, which funded a lot of the work that Councillor Stevens was just mentioning. So this allows us to deliver a lot of high quality biodiversity work, but it is a long-term risk, the fact that we are so reliant on it. So if funding reduces or ceases, our ability to deliver would be severely diminished. We do look at other funding sources, such as from NRW. We get some money from them. We've previously tried to get money from the lottery, for example, but these are all competitive pots, and therefore they're not guaranteed, and also they are quite short term. So yeah, so in present we're very reliant on the Welsh Government support.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
My apologies, Andrew. I'm anxious, you see.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, no, just to add, yeah, Mark's spot on, but it's not just an issue in terms of in the nature team either. It's wide. I mean, a lot of our active travel grant schemes, as we all know, they're reliant on Welsh Government grants as well. So it's not necessarily a case in terms of just with the nature conservation team, but I mean, one that we'll come to later in terms of the cut and collect that began as a trial, but as you're aware, that there was continued funding to continue those sites going on further from this year. So.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Michael.
Okay, next question on behalf of Chris Evans is what steps are being taken to make sure that we can maintain new biodiversity and green infrastructure projects long term, not just install them?
Take that, you
No,
Paul.
I'll take this. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so it is a constant a long-term challenge for us. There's a lot of the grants are focused on the capital delivery, but don't provide long-term maintenance funding. The situation has improved slightly in recent years, but it's and in some schemes we do get funding for the first couple of years, which and if it's new planting schemes, gives an opportunity to establish. But longer term, it affects like all councils really. We keep raising it with Welsh Government, but I think until the sort of models for applying for grant change, it will remain a pressure. So we do try to factor it in at the outset, and I say it's for a lot of these schemes, regular maintenance is essential for them to establish, and you can see there are examples out there that have been done many years ago where a large scale landscaping planting scheme has been undertaken, and then it's just left, and it just the area becomes overgrown. So we don't want we don't want to repeat some of the mistakes of the past, and we're very focused on that in terms of the schemes we're actually looking to deliver at the moment. In some cases we can work with volunteers to look after some of the spaces and provide them with tools, etc. But it's not something that they can take on complete responsibility for.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to say anything, Andrew?
Yeah, no, so it's just Paul given an excellent assessment of the question, Chair, but just to cover again a reference in terms of active travel. This has been an issue in the past with our active travel routes, with us bidding for the grants, putting in the route, and then having additional pressure put on parks usually in order to keep up the maintenance requirements on that. It's certainly active travel is another part of my portfolio, as you're aware, but it's certainly something I've raised via the WLGA in the past, and any opportunities that I got, and this year, again, as you're aware, we put an additional funding into allowing for the maintenance of those active travel routes, and so it can be a problem with grants, but we don't want to stop doing stuff either, Chair. So, but we do have to be mindful of the pressure it puts elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the problem is we got some lovely planting, and I think Westway was a good example. There's lovely planting all along Westway, and it's all full of litter then. Not our fault, we don't throw it, but you've got to manage it and safely because of where it is in the centre reservation, and obviously the plants themselves need maintenance. So, it's not sort of a fair thing if we're being encouraged to do all these duties and yet we're not getting the monies for as you said, to actually look after them afterwards, just to make sure they flourish and look nice. I mean, the rain garden, I've noticed, I've seen it down by St Helens. Sometimes it looks really nice, and other times, what do you find in it? Litter. It's quite soul destroying, and it's not fair that we've got to waste our money and time going back to it. So there we are. I've been on my soapbox. I'll go on to the next question, which is Sarah.
Good morning, all. I would like to say thank you to Andrew Stevens for the hedge laying, because I think he was quite modest. He did put a lot of effort into it as well. So thank you. It was very brave because it was close to Mumbles Road. It was right by the Mumbles Road, and there were big trees, and there was a lot of oh my gosh. But he knew we could do it, and it looks amazing. And we've had nothing but positive regard, which is wonderful when something's that good for biodiversity, looks good, and people like it. It's a big win-win. So thank you. Right, my question is, let me find my question. How will the new 2026-28 action plan help more council services areas contribute to nature recovery?
You, Mark, is it?
Thank you. Yeah, so the plan, the new plan builds on the previous one, but is more streamlined and clearer. Ultimately, though, it's not really about the plan itself in terms of delivering the nature recovery. It is going to come down to the people. So, you know, the staff on the ground, the skills, the enthusiasm and the resources through the council. And that's not obviously not just from our nature recovery team, but like we've talked about before, about everybody across the council getting involved. So I think, yeah, through raising awareness and building confidence and having the capacity to act are just as important than actually having the plan in place.
Do you want to add anything, Andrew?
No, Mark was spot on, but I will thank Councillor Keating for the very kind comments. So where there's a will, there's a way.
I did say he's a farmer, so he's used to bad weather, difficult conditions. So well done, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the answer.
The next question is from Bridget. I know you weren't in the pre-meeting, but we thought you might like to answer it. Ask it, I mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As Andrew and Mark both know, we met. I met with them back in February regarding local nature reserve on Mynydd Clew. Maybe just a gentle reminder as to, I just wondered, Mark, how far you got with that query we had. But the question is, what progress is being made towards declaring the new local nature reserves, and how will they be managed once designated?
Thank you.
So, you, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for your question. So in terms of Mynydd Clew and Bryn Clew, we're still waiting on comments back from our Commons registration officer in terms of the details about fencing there. But in general, in terms of the local nature reserve, so we've been drafting the management plans that we have to produce. We've been engaging informally with Natural Resources Wales, who we have to consult with to get their kind of approval for getting these declared. We're currently waiting on the final report for our community engagement work that was done to fully understand how the public feel about the sites. So once we've got that back, we're going to combine all of that information, plus the feedback we've got from all of our officers and councillors to produce a report, which will then take through the various steps through the council. Overall, in terms of the draft feedback we've had back, it's been really positive from the public and from ward members. We've had a few departments in the council that have raised a few concerns that we're trying to work through and make sure everyone's happy. So yeah, then once we've pulled together all of that information, then we'll then take it to cabinet to decide which sites will be declared, and then we'll carry on through the various steps through that.
So
okay, thank you.
Going on further from there, if I can, please, Chair. We discussed earlier about the maintenance of these projects that go on. So once it is declared, do we have a contingency in place for maintenance of them once they are recognised?
So at the minute, as we've talked about before, we are very reliant on external funding. So in terms of our plans from the very beginning, we've made it clear that kind of everything that we're proposing is resource dependent. And so obviously, when we're producing these management plans, we'll have our ambitious targets of what we're trying to achieve with the sites. And if we keep getting the funding, and hopefully we're going to keep getting more funding, we'll obviously do everything we can. If we start getting less funding, then obviously we'll have to reduce those ambitions while still making sure that we're looking after the sites as best we can, dependent on the resources available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we go on, Oliver, can you please put your camera on? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And just on that point, is a number of these sites are already designated as sites for importance for nature conservation, think sites anyway. And as you know yourself, Councillor Rowlands, in terms of there can be certainly at least on some of the sites there could be the potential for some things like conservational grazing, which will help with a lot of the maintenance potential headaches around it all as well. So I think overall in the LNR consultation, from what I've seen and what I've heard, feedback so far very well received. And I know some initial works has taken place in some of them around. I know Mynydd Clew in particular there was some cutback works done there relatively recently to try and improve the grasslands. I mean, that's long been far overgrown and left to go back to what it was. And I think overall these will see improvement across a number of different sites, Chair. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the next question now is actually Sarah's going to ask it and then ask the question after as well. Thank you.
Okay, shall I go straight from one to the other then, Chair, or just...
Yes, please, unless anybody else
Okay.
indicates.
Okay, what is the long-term plan for tackling invasive species across Swansea, given the high cost and widespread nature of the problem? That was Chris's question. And mine is, how will the council improve ecological evidence gathering and monitoring over the next 3 years? Thank you.
Who am I starting with? Paul, is it?
Start with me. So from the nature recovery perspective, obviously it's invasive species management is very resource intensive. It's a constant ongoing problem for us to tackle. And from our perspective, the priority is protecting the most important and sensitive sites, those sort of designated sites and the key habitats, and managing the buffers around them. We also look to assist where invasive species are causing a problem that could result in proceedings or claims against the council as well. But you know, at the end of the day, we've got to target certain species at a catchment scale where possible. I know there's you know, certainly upstream from and might be beyond our administrative boundaries, but you know, that is an issue for us. Yeah, we could always do more, but it's something that needs, you know, additional long-term funding.
Okay, thank you. And who's going
Thank
to
you.
answer the monitoring?
Okay, so yeah, in terms of improving ecological evidence and monitoring, so this directly links to our kind of global 30 by 30 nature recovery targets. So we recognise that evidence gathering and monitoring need to improve. Historically, capacity has been kind of a constraint for us, but we're strengthening this work by improving data sets, designing and trialling new monitoring protocols for our local nature reserves, and using new tools like drones and our kind of mapping work in general, so we can be better prepared for future reporting, which will feed directly into our next cycle of Section 6 reporting. But given our limited resources, obviously we need to kind of take advantage of other partners. So obviously from like our Swansea Local Nature a partnership, we've got, you know, our local universities that can help us with research and long-term monitoring, involving trained volunteers where appropriate, and then also collaborative working with, you know, other partners like Wildlife Trust, National Trust, etc. So hopefully that'll help us improve our robust evidence base for nature recovery.
Okay, Sarah's nodding, I think.
Thank you. No, yeah, that's fine. Thank you for your answers.
Okay, well, I've been very quiet, so it's my turn. What further opportunities exist to involve communities, volunteers and schools in nature recovery work? We've heard about friends groups and other projects you've been doing, but have we got any more opportunities that we can see to involve, you know, members of the community to make them understand about it? Right, they're all trying to pass the back to answer the question here. I think it's Paul.
Yeah, I think we've got a long answer for you, but so we'll split it up a bit. But certainly, you know, we in recent years we've significantly expanded the opportunities for public involvement in our work. Again, this is something that's been down to additional external funding, and we've got a dedicated member of staff who's a volunteer coordinator. And I've got to say that, you know, they've been excellent in terms of what they've achieved over the last few years in terms of the events and volunteering opportunities they've created, not only in the nature recovery team but also supporting the Gower National Landscape team as well. And they're excellent at social media in terms of engaging with people in not only as all the events and opportunities on the council's web pages, and there are monthly newsletters produced, but they've got various social media platforms that they're reaching out, Facebook, Instagram, etc., to engage, and the numbers are in each year. I think there's about 700-800 volunteers are engaged on the various different projects. So, and also then there's regular information circulated around various sources, whether it's to councillors, local area coordinators, other council teams, relays with external media, as well as the local nature partnership. I don't really want to say a little bit more about the nature partnership work, Mark.
Definitely, yeah. So in terms of the Swansea LMP, many of those partners lead their own kind of community projects that either we support through funding or just generally advertising them, events, school-focused opportunities. We actively encourage communities to take part in our citizen science initiatives like the City Nature Challenge, which is coming up next month, species monitoring projects, habitat enhancement works. We've talked about hedge laying and also other kind of recording efforts. We also encourage communities and groups to develop their own kind of small projects like wildflower counts, providing advice and guidance to kind of individuals and volunteers and groups. So it's quite a lot of work. It's amazing how many people are interested and would like advice. And then finally, we've got strong links with universities and colleges and schools. So yeah, students and pupils regularly supporting our projects and initiatives, tree planting, kind of wildflower work. And then when it comes specifically to schools, we're currently working to create a new network which will replace the much missed Swansea Environmental Education Forum, which is trying to put school staff and outdoor education trainers providers together.
Okay, thank you. Because a lot of schools are eco schools, and they got a lot of pupils involved with that. So if you can link in, to the schools specifically, because they are our future and the ones that need to understand about the nature recovery. And you can see Andrew now. Go on, Andrew.
No, yeah, thanks, thanks, Jay. Yes, and it's spot on. I think that schools, where viable, they certainly do have an important play to partners, and a lot of cases I know in schools I've been involved with, there's a huge amount of good work being done there now, and the great things with the children is that they is certainly at the forefront of the way that that they want to see things going in terms of improving the environment and biodiversity, and they're very climate conscious as well. And just on some of the points that were raised, not to mention the hedge laying again, but the volunteer workshops that were carried out over a period of a month, literally all booked up probably within the first week of it going out. So this shows that there is a lot of take up there for it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and I agree. Schools are really important, especially the primary schools. They do a lot of outdoor learning, so it's an excellent opportunity if we can tap into it. Engage with more schools. Obviously, it's a little more difficult with secondary schools, but they are eco-conscious as well. Now, I think my next question is probably longer than the answer. Oh, sorry, Will. Will.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to come in on that. Obviously, I think we as a committee could probably take credit for the biodiversity school governor that's now, put for each school should appoint a biodiversity governor. And this was one of the things that we spoke about a number of years ago on this committee. So it's something that, from my knowledge, was the first time anyone had spoken about it was at this committee a number of years ago, probably 6-7 years ago. It got brought up a few times. So obviously, that's going to make a difference in a lot of schools, and I think it's across Wales as well. But every little helps, and I think it'll give the biodiversity governor a nudge to make things happen in those schools. So I think that's a good thing worth mentioning as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Will. Right, I've on to my very long question. In Appendix 1.3113. Habitat enhancement. It states wildflower, bulb and tree planting improve pollinator corridors and increase structural diversity in green spaces, contributing to ecosystem resilience. However, this is totally different in practice. Why are we not using perennials for the wildflowers, and why are we still using glyphosate, which I don't like saying, which is killing the things, example, butterflies that we want to protect? There is a B, but I'll finish with the A. I've got an email telling me that we have to be the same across the council, because we inquired from Dunford and Calais about not using the glyphosate and letting the wildflowers grow from previous years, or could we have natural, British species? And I have got the email here, and we were told we couldn't. I understand that West Cross had the same issue, and they went to the two councillors with the community council, and I think they had turf that was impregnated with the native species. And I know Councillor Gibbard, who's one of my colleagues, is looking into it, because we're supposed to be encouraging wildlife, and why are we using a weed killer and then putting wildflowers and killing them? Sorry, not a very nice question. Mark.
That's fine. Yeah, I can start on this one. So I guess obviously from our perspective that there is a lot of work going on beyond the displays that you're specifically talking about, where we are doing lots of wildflower planting and bulbs and perennial and tree planting and doing lots of great nature recovery work. But in terms of the kind of the highly visible flower bed displays, which I think you're talking about, that are still used across the country, obviously from our nature perspective, these are not ideal, and often do rely on, like you say, on glyphosate to create them. But it is ultimately a policy and political choice. And so my understanding, some of this sounds maybe a bit different from your experience, is that obviously people can choose to not have these beds in their ward, but I guess what you have instead of them will be somewhat dependent on funding and maintenance costs in order to implement them. So, and I think that if more people were aware, whether it's ward members or the public, about how these beds were created, they may have different views about them. So I think that there probably does need to be a case to raise awareness of how they're created, so people have the full information available.
Just before you come in, Andrew, I'll read a little bit of the email, not the whole thing, because I've made reference to it. But it said, we acknowledge that Dunford Meadow, which was one part, was not sprayed last year as part of the trials, that we just wanted to leave it natural to recover. However, as noted in the email correspondence, the site was weedier than other areas that had been sprayed off. And there was another inference. Right, weeds are flowers at the end of the day. And if you've got weeds in them, isn't that natural? We've seen this particular scheme seems to be not helping nature, if I can put it that way. It's just a display. So I know they're political choices, maybe, and this is probably more for Andrew, we need to look at what we're encouraging people to do. It started off as a wonderful scheme, and I do know that was a late councillor who had an idea to do it. But now we've moved on a number of years, and we are very aware of our responsibilities. And I know we've debated the weed killer in here, and I know the answer to that one. I'm just talking about encouraging ward members to perhaps use a different scheme or things. Sorry, Andrew, I've put you on the hot seat.
No, you haven't, Chair. And that's why the opt-in is there. I mean, if you want to make a conscious decision as a ward member for your area to not take up the actual wildflower planting, and granted, I know there's some disagreements in the fact they are called wildflowers, where perhaps they are actually not, in some respects. But they at the end of the day, they are still very well received with the public. Okay, so even though we call them something else, we can. And I think Councillor Keaton, you said once before, with them being annuals, and we call them hardy annuals or some long name. Perhaps I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go. I think we're getting a bit too bogged down with the naming of them. But it's important that they do use a mix in terms of parks, in terms of some of the mixes use of both perennials and annuals as well. Now that you could possibly say that that's defeating the object if they're just going to, if it's going to be weed killer over and they're going to reset that particular bed at any one time. Fully understand that. I can't. without any parks colleagues being here now, I couldn't comment exactly on the reasons for the constraints around having to, for them having to prepare the bed first. But my understanding from it is they'll prepare the bed itself in terms of they use the glyphosate as a bed preparation tool to ensure that it gets a clear slate from the get-go to ensure that the mix is put in as a best chance to thrive, and that also allows them to do some sites around with a bit more easier maintenance requirement as well. Where it's not quite so labor intensive then in order for them to do it. And I guess I wouldn't want to see us just go away from all this entirely in terms of as I said, they are very well received. I know just from as a ward member in my own locality, if we were to decide to drop out of the wildflower scheme, then I'd have the town council on us, and I'd have a lot of residents that are unhappy. So I'd rather do a two-prong approach. Really, we can still keep doing this around for the various wards, for the ones that choose to want to take it up, but we can also focus the fact on the excellent work that's been done with things like the cut and collect, which you come on to, and a number of other biodiversity initiatives we're doing across the county. So I think there's room for both, myself, Chair. So.
Sarah.
Oh, he knows what I'm going to say. They are hardy annuals, Andrew. End of. But the point is, I go for middle ground. People do love the hardy annuals. They love the poppies. They love cornflowers and cosmos. And I don't have a problem with them because they're, the bees love them too. Lots of insects love them. The problem is the fact that they put the stuff down, the toxins down, and they're not good then. I'd like to see a middle ground where we have a go at just trying to put them down without spraying first. I noticed on the occasion where we stopped, the following year the marigolds came up on their own accord, but then they got sort of cut down by the grass cutting. So that was a bit sad because I'd like to have seen what would have happened if we'd left it. But I think there's a middle ground, and if the weeds, wildflowers grow in between the hardy perennials, the hardy annuals, so much the better. I'm preaching to the choir because I've said this so many times before. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that's what we're trying to say. Bridget, I think you indicated.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I know that how well received they are in my ward, and I know how many requests I get for them. I understand totally the damage that glyphosate does, but has any work been done to look at the time period where glyphosate is dangerous to pollinators and anything else? And then compare that to the benefits that you get, because when the flower beds are established, they are a magnet for pollinators then. And, I'm sure we've all seen how they come. So I don't know, is there a piece of work that's been done to compare that to see, for the short term, is there a long-term gain? Or are we totally wrong, and are we doing totally the wrong thing by using the glyphosate? Is there a piece of work available to look at that, to compare the benefits?
I know we haven't got anybody here from Parks, but is anybody going to give us a little insight? We might have to have a written answer to your question, but I think Mark's going to have a go.
Yeah, I don't think there's any really properly robust scientific research which truly kind of shows how long. Well, I mean, there is some science out there showing how long the glyphosate kind of stays on the soil and potentially on the plants, but in terms of the potential impact on the pollinators which are going up to those flowers once they've gone up, which was a long time ago since when the ground was treated, I don't think there's much information on that. There is definitely science out there showing that glyphosate isn't good for the soil, and so I would argue purely from my experience as an ecologist that it would definitely be better to just have a native perennial wildflower grassland that just lives there all the time, that is storing carbon and that is good for the ground and good for the soil, and just naturally has the species and flowers that our pollinators are designed to collect nectar from. And I think in some ways we do just need to accept that these displays are mainly from a kind of a public point of view to look really colourful and nice.
Thank you, Mark. I think it was a really good answer. Thank you. Right, so the next bit is B, which we've just said. It's expand current wildflower meadow management cut and collect scheme. Is that where you're leaving it and hoping the flowers will grow in it? Or are you planting flowers in it and people can go and cut it? It doesn't actually make a lot of sense unless you've got an area that does it. Andrew, is it?
I'll start on this one, and then whether Mark comes in, because as Mark knows, I do really like this scheme. And basically, by removing the grass clippings at the right time, the idea is to deplete soil nutrients, which holds back some of the more dominant grasses, and creates the conditions that native wildflowers need to establish. So cut and collect, I think I referenced in Cabinet before, Chair, that cut and collect is one of the best tools we have for restoring and maintaining species-rich grassland on suitable council land. And I think part of the reason that Mark perhaps got me to adopt the scheme was him telling me about how it mimics conservational grazing. So, so it's just to highlight one real clear example of the cut and collect, which I'm sure you're well aware of, Chair, is in Dunvan Park. I mean, last summer, our cut and collect approach produced a stunning display of wild orchids. In fact, when we did a count, I think it came to 4,000, over 4,900, or almost 5,000 orchids. I know, which is a brilliant result, though, and exactly what the kind of thing we want to see from this programme. And I know it was something this earlier that Councillor Gibbard was certainly very supportive of. So we're already doing this across 16 sites, covering about 60 acres. And that was supported by over £200,000 worth of local places for nature grant funding for machinery, and just as I mentioned earlier on the addition funding point, it's fair to say this work is certainly resource intensive. It might not be as resource intensive to have a herd of cows, but I don't know how that's going to work with some of the verges. But so don't quote me on that, Chair. But it's good that in order to continue the trial, that the funding has been built this year into this year's budget, so this will give us a stronger footing to ensure that these schemes continue. And again, even on these, public feedback has been largely positive, with people saying they're seeing more wildlife and enjoying the meadows more. And this is. And not to detract from your last question in terms of around the wildflowers or whatever we decide to call them, these do play a crucial part, and something I'd like to see continue in nature.
And they're natural. We don't need your cows down on Scrutiny. They have the geese from the Boughton Lake come out and go along the verge and eat quite often. So there's a variety of wild animals that can come and help out. So our last question now is Councillor Mike Day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, in the report, there's reference made to the sinks and other areas that the council controls. I just wondered if there's an overall database which members could have access to, and what the surveys, the botanical surveys that are referenced in 3.2.2.1 are actually sort of able to show and demonstrate. Is it possible for us to look at a database for our own ward, for example, of all the green areas that are included, and whether there is any kind of plan for that particular area of natural environment? There are several within the Scrutiny ward, for example. where I'm not entirely sure whether there is an overall plan or not. So two questions, I suppose. One is there an overall database of all the green areas that we have available and under council control? And secondly, then is can ward councillors have access to the database to see what work, if any, has been done in each of those green space areas?
Well, I'll kick off with this. Thank you. Yeah. I suppose the easy answer is no, we don't. But I'm just thinking back about 10 years or more ago, we did do an open space audit for the local development plan, which took a couple of years to pull together, and it mapped every inch of green space across the county. The problem with that is it's just impossible to keep it up to date, and the database was so large, it was unmanageable, and certainly in terms of getting access to it. So I think what we do is we tend to audit and monitor the most important sites, obviously the sites of importance for nature conservation and some of the other priority areas. So that's that's about as much as we can do with current resources. There is a green infrastructure assessment being produced for the local development plan, which will be something that you can access. There's also another piece of work, not necessarily for the sort of management process, but in terms of sort of general awareness of areas, which is a sort of wild about your ward work, which I know Deb on the call here has been involved with, and we're looking to roll that out and share that information on a ward by ward basis to all members. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, Deb, but Deb?
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yes, it is a project which has been ongoing, and it's partly waiting on improvements to the IT systems so that we can actually create interactive maps. I think our IT department are on the kind of just early stages of developing that. We have produced like detailed descriptions for each ward, but they're not really readily available yet. But it's something that we are working on, and hopefully that could be made available both to officers, councillors, and the public when we can get the IT system to kind of help us to upload all of that in a format that's more accessible.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? Has anybody else got any other questions? Will.
Thanks, Chair. Just a specific question, really, on common land. Driving over Fairwood the other day, you could see that what was obviously used to be grazed much heavier than it currently is. Klein Common as well. Obviously, we don't have as many commoners access grazing, and the common land sort of there's a lot more trees popping up everywhere, and I just wonder, firstly, how that's managed, how that affects the nature in that area, and what, if anything, the council's doing. Is it a positive for biodiversity? Is it not what we want? What's happening with the management of the common land? I do have another follow-up question. I may as well chat after that.
Okay, thank you. So who's going to answer the question about the commons? Mark.
Yeah, so it's definitely obviously that from a nature recovery point of view, that there is a long-standing problems with enough grazing on the sites, and obviously a lot of people have seen a lot of the burns that have been happening across Gower and a lot of the commons. Obviously we don't manage, directly, the council doesn't really manage nearly all of the commons on Gower. Obviously they are, we do own Fairwood Common, but that is still looked after by the commoners. So there's only so much control we can have of the situation. Obviously, with it being within the Gower National Landscape, clearly we can have some sort of, hopefully some positive influence. And I know the team have been working on various sites across Gower, including some of the commons, to try and undertake nature recovery work. But I think there's only so much we can do to help with that problem.
Okay, I mean, well, just to comment on that, I mean, in my opinion, the commons will be lost as a grazing option forever pretty soon, because there's some sections which there's a huge amount of trees popping up. So, I mean, that, in my opinion, that needs to be looked at. Maybe the council should get more involved with that. I think Bridget might have something on this before my next question.
Bridget, did you want to come in or not?
Yeah, just as a point of, you know, I'm involved with our local Commoners Association, which manage 3,500 acres in the west, you know, the north of Swansea then, and over up to Neath Talbot. The issue that we notice is, especially down the land we've got under our jurisdiction in Gosainen, is a lot of the land hasn't been grazed because when animals were out there, a lot of them were chased by dogs, and the infiltration of people, basically, and then, you know, the encouragement for people to use common and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but where you've got livestock which maintain the common land, and you've got humans with dogs as well, you get an issue. So what happens then is that the livestock come off the commons, and then we end up with land which is not maintained by the grazing animal. So we get and I saw it last night. I drove home at 8 o'clock last night. There must have been at least 5 different sites of huge burns because the grass there hasn't been grazed down, so that there's a lot of fire fodder there, you know, and it is a huge issue. It's something that I have brought up for probably the last 20-25 years. It's something that hasn't really been addressed in the new sustainable farming scheme that's been introduced. It's a huge issue. What really we need to do is find a balance between being able to maintain the land, people using it for air and exercise, and farmers using it. And basically the best way, and I'm sure Mark will agree with me here, and Councillor Stevens, that you know, you won't get a better maintainer of common land than a grazing animal. But trying to manage that is really, really difficult. And it would be good to have support, you know, as a commoner then, and somebody using the common. It would be great to have the public support to be able to graze that land and manage it in a way that benefits all.
Thank you, Bridget. I know Andrew's got to go, so he's really anxious to speak.
Yeah, very quick, and just to say, yeah, no, I fully agree. Actually, Councillor Rowlands, in terms of that, that it is concerning in terms of that there's potential grazing being lost from a lot of our commons. I think there's a huge reason why why they're going into some of the you know, so with the overgrowth and a lot of the trees, whether it's with the or whatever, and I certainly think that grazing can play a pivotal role in not just the national landscape, but the wider Swansea, really, in terms of keeping our countryside and our commons looking in the way they are, and I'll certainly advocate for any conservational grazing and any grazing where it's done correctly in terms of on our common areas where we can. And as you know, Councillor Rowlands, from our previous discussions on what we're trying to do in some other areas as well. So yeah, I thank you, Chair, and I really got to go. I don't want to cut short, especially when it comes to this conversation. But I've got to get somewhere at 12, and I've got about 10 minutes to get there. So just want to thank you and all the committee for all the input and for the officers as well. So we very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew, for coming along, which is always interesting. So we've got Mark now, not Mark, sorry, Paul.
Yeah, just to add to that, Chair. I mean, I think it's a good question that we could direct to the countryside team, because obviously they are working with more closely with the commoners than the nature recovery team. I know they've had through grant funding, they've worked with commoners on the sort of these sort of virtual fencing collars, if you like, that have gone around livestock to sort of to stop them straying onto the roads. And obviously the roadkill is a real problem, and that's why there's less animals on there grazing. So I'd rather give you a fuller answer from that team if that's more appropriate.
Yeah, that's fine. We can have a written answer. We'll write a letter as we normally do, so we can have the answer that way. Okay, thank you. Have we finished on this section now? Anyone else?
Well,
sorry, very briefly.
Well, yeah. I do think it's worth following up on the common land thing, because we're talking about patches of wildflowers in wards of like 20-30 square meters. Spend a lot of time talking about that, and then the common lands, we're talking about huge areas, thousands of acres. And if you're really passionate about biodiversity loss, surely that's where there's going to be a lot of bang for our buck. I'm just wondering also how another huge part of the land in Gower and Swansea is obviously farmers. I'm just wondering how and what we do on top of what government incentives, obviously, but how and what the council do to work with farmers on improving biodiversity from a council point of view.
I don't know if it's Paul or Mark. It's Paul, I think.
Again, I say this is that falls under the countryside team rather than nature recovery. But there is a current project called Fermio Bro, which is providing grants to local farmers for exactly that, to improve biodiversity on their land. Now, again, we can give you more chapter and verse with the relevant from the relevant team, but the scheme kicked in probably whilst we had a grant of 100,000 to give out over the course of the year. It didn't start till after April last year, and you had to appoint a member of staff and etc. So the grant scheme didn't get up and running till about October time. I think we were able to deliver about 75% of the grant this year, which was better than most other authorities. And it's been increased, it's been doubled for 26-27. So we've got over £200,000 to offer to local farmers. But it's a Gower focus scheme, or within a kilometre, I think is the limit of the Gower A&B boundary. And we have a part-time member of staff, Mark Blackmore, who is overseeing that project.
Thank you very much. Bridget, are you within that scheme? Kilometre of AONB?
No, and that's exactly what I was going to say, is that, you're missing a huge trick here. And this is the problem. It's all Gower centralised, and we've got a huge amount of farmers from to the northwest and east of Swansea that could all be involved in this and contributing to it. If you've only got to look from Llangefellach up to where I am, the amount of farmers in that area, well, I'm a secretary of West Glamorgan Commoners Association. We've got 120 members, you know, and they can't get involved in this because it's Gower centralised. You know, it is something that could be looked at, and as you know, something just to go on from what Will said, you know, we're worried about these small little areas of flowers in the city where, you know, we could be benefiting from farmers across the whole of the county that will add to what helps biodiversity.
Oh,
Mark, I think, wants to come in.
all I was going to add to that is I completely agree with you. My understanding of the Fermio Bro scheme is that it's a trial across the whole of Wales, across the national landscapes, which the information they get from that and the findings and how things work to try and do more for nature recovery are feeding into the sustainable farming scheme that then will go wider to everyone. So I completely get your frustrations, but my understanding is that this is kind of a phased approach of learning from doing what we can in the national landscape, and then that will be fed into the higher levels of the sustainable farming scheme for what can be done for nature. And the other project that I forgot about as well when this discussion was going on about the Commons and Gower is that there's also another project which we're not leading on, but we're involved with, which is the Gower Landscape Connections project, which is National Landscape Association and the Gower Society. So they're working on a project. They haven't secured it yet to try and get along. It's like a 10-year length project to try and do work on the Commons. Again, that would be more Gower focused, but it's just showing that there is work. And obviously, like Paul says, the work of the Countryside team and the Gower National Landscape team, they've been working with the commoners for a long time to try and support nature recovery and to try and encourage grazing.
Okay, thank you very much. And your points are well made, Bridget. We'll put it in the letter as well. And I'm sure the two officers take away your concerns as well. So if there's no more questions, thank you both very much. You've had quite a session this morning, but a very, very informative session. Thank you very much. We now move over to... Oh, I thought you wanted to ask a question then, Michael. Sorry. We're now going to go to air quality management. We seem to come round very quickly, this one. And are you introducing it, Andrew?
Yeah,
Sorry,
thanks,
the other
yeah.
Andrew, Councillor Andrew Williams.
Yeah, the other Andrew's got his skates on to go and meet Mr. Skates. Yeah, thanks, Chair. This report provides an update on air quality management in Swansea. It summarises the latest monitoring position, confirms ongoing compliances with key air quality objectives, and outlines the Council's continued approach to monitoring, planning consultations and responding to complaints. It also highlights Welsh Government's proposed PM25 targets, an annual mean concentration target and a population exposure reduction target. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Tom and the team for this very comprehensive report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much and welcome everybody. And sorry you had to sit through it all, but I'm sure you've actually learned something as well, so we hope. Right, so the first question was meant to have been from Chris, but unfortunately he's not able to make it, so I shall ask it. Are we confident that reducing over 100 monitoring sites last year hasn't made it harder to spot any air quality problems early? Who's answering it? Tom, I assume.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, the simple answer is yes, we are confident. These sites have been reduced for, I think, the two sort of priority reasons are we have an over a 5-year sort of demonstration of compliance with the annual mean objectives for nitrogen dioxide, but actually they're probably in the region of around 50% of that threshold, so around about 20 micrograms. When we first put sites out, we'll sort of put a higher number in an area because we're trying to quantify concentrations in certain sort of street runs, and we do thin them then over time so we have representation. But then when we get to the point where we know we're compliant and we're around about 50% potentially of the annual mean, we only have a finite resource. So we look to reposition elements of tubes. These diffusion tubes are quite a cheap sort of indicative method. But it enables us to move things around and it enables us to maintain elements of work that we can do within the budgets available. So in a nutshell, we have to assess annually. So we are always looking and considering areas, but these reductions, won't pose any problems for us going forward.
Okay, that's reassuring. The next question is from Michael and the following one.
Right, what still needs to happen before the council can decide whether to change or revoke the current air quality management area?
Thank you, Councillor. So the good news here really is that we've submitted the annual progress report, which has been accepted by Welsh Government and is now on the website for us, which reports back on 2024 data. So the 2024 data set has confirmed the 5th year of compliance. So we're now able to revoke. We can look at revocation of the AQMAs across Swansea. So you've got the one in the Havard, Sketty area and Forest Bach. We are compliant with the Welsh Government objectives. Their policy and technical guidance sort of sets out a revocation process, which can take between 12 and 18 months. And the key sort of development over the years now is looking at that community engagement, getting that population, that local environment engaged in the revocation process. And that's the sort of point we're at. It's not a quick process. It's not an easy process, and it's one that will take time. But we're now at that point where we'll be looking at that formal sort of procedure. We'll have to close down the action plan that was produced years ago, but we'll look at developing that briefing note for the revocation cycle and what would be required.
Okay, thank you. Right, next question is, how prepared is Swansea for the new Welsh Government targets for PM 2.5 that must be met by 2035?
Again, I would say Swansea's in quite a good place for actual monitoring data for 2.5, for PM 2.5. We've got 4 referenced methods, pieces of kit in Swansea, which give us the robust data. And we also have several indicative pieces of equipment as well. Our annual mean currently is between about 6.5 and 11 micrograms per metre cubed across Swansea on those monitoring stations. This requirement for the new standard for Welsh Government, whilst the consultation's closed, they're considering evidence here. It's a Welsh Government responsibility for reporting. However, it's been modelled on likely compliance across Wales. But given the position we're currently in, it's certainly indicative that we will be compliant by 2035, if not before, because we're there or thereabouts now. The unit that is reading around 10.5 to 11 is a roadside unit down in Portennant, which is close to the traffic source. So whilst we have that reading, we still have the ability to do a back correction, in a sense, for distance when we're looking at pollution for a population assessment. So we're confident that we will drop and we will be compliant by 2035. That's the annual mean concentration target. The other target they've put in there is that population exposure reduction target. And that's a key sort of policy tool for us across Wales to look at further working towards reducing that exposure, which is in the planning cycles, the vehicle fleets, when we look at industry and combustion. It's a nice tool for us to be able to use when we look at development and when we're looking at that, prevention principle as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Bridget. You're on mute, Bridget.
Sorry, Chair. I was reading something then as I was talking about. I'd actually attended a meeting with Swansea Council, with Swansea University, and they were doing a pilot scheme of preparing an app to go on people's phones for all residents within Swansea, and I found it very, very interesting, and I thought it would, it could tie in with this. So it's just anybody can go along and report pollution then that they see. So and it was just an interesting piece of work, and something possibly Swansea Council could get involved in. And if you did want to know who the contact is, I'm more than happy to give it. But my question is, are there any parts of Swansea where pollution levels are rising or could become a concern in the future?
Thank you, Councillor. On that particular question, rising, I would say potentially not. No, we've seen a decrease in 86 of the sites over the last year. Had a decrease, downward trend continuing in data. The ones that showed a slight elevation were literally 1 or 2 micrograms, if that. But again, we're in that low 20s of micrograms per meter cubed as an annual mean concentration for nitrogen dioxide. So in current sort of build phase that we're aware of, I would say no. There are no rising or no increasing levels of certainly of nitrogen dioxide, and our particulate matter PM10 and then the smaller fraction of 2.5. We are seeing quite sort of consistent sort of baselines in Swansea. We have an impact here as being a coastal city as well. We will get sulfites and aerosols off the sea. And we always see the Saharan dust storms, for example, they do impact our data sets as well. But we are actually sort of quite consistent in our particulate levels as well. With reference to the Swansea University project, very quickly there, can I ask whether that was a recent focus group that you were invited to attend? Oh, sorry, you're on mute again, sorry.
We can't hear you, Bridget.
No, sorry, I was trying to find the right screen then. It was, yeah, it was a focus group, it was, and it was, they put in together this app, and the girl's name was Caitlin Bunce.
Yes, so that is actually, you'll come on to one of the later questions. That's actually a study that we're leading as a collaborative research project with Swansea University, Nottingham University, Blaenau Gwent Council, Monmouthshire, and Newport, and ourselves in Swansea. That's a grant application that we submitted in May last year. So yes, when we get to the end of that, and no doubt we'll be able to give a much wider presentation when we finish that year one. But yes, we are leading that collaboration already.
But it seems a very good project, and I can see it have only been a benefit to the city, to be honest.
Oh, wonderful! And if you're happy, I can use you as a tagline when we get to future reports. But yeah, fantastic. That's great feedback to have, because that is the intention, the primary objective of that interface and that development of the service.
Okay, you happy with that? Right, the next questions then are from myself, a favourite one, as you know, Tom. Are we seeing many complaints about wood burners, smoke, or burning waste? And how are these issues being handled?
I'll bring Adrian in for that one as the team leader.
Thank you for the question. Yes, on a day-to-day, we are seeing an increase across those areas. We continue to deal with them under the Environmental Protection Act, Part 3, which refers to statutory nuisance. In relation to the wood burners installation, they can be checked against heat task compliance for a competent person scheme, and we also use other waste enforcement powers where applicable.
Okay, it still doesn't stop in mind.
It's an ongoing work.
Especially when you've got builders who are too lazy to take their rubble and stuff away. Right, the next one is, do we have enough resources and staff to continue monitoring air quality at the current level? You sort of answered this with the earlier question, I think from Michael.
Yes, if I jump back in there. Obviously, resources are a key challenge. The same officers who do air quality are the ones who do water quality, noise nuisance, contaminated land, etc., etc. Our service operates on fewer resources than 5 to 10 years ago. As a result, we use a consultant to support the production of the annual progress report, and additional staffing would allow quicker complaint response and reduce reliance on triaging cases.
Okay, thank you very much. The next one, we're back to Michael.
Right, how is air quality considered when planning applications for new developments are assessed?
Thank you, Councillor. So planning applications, as long as we are consulted as by the planning department, they have their protocols and procedures they follow as to developments in certain areas, for example. So a mandatory consultation will be if it's within an air quality management area, for example. But if it's a development that's near a new highway infrastructure, for example, or what's known as a heavily trafficked road, or industry in those areas, they consult the pollution section as well. So we respond by the usual means of, you go through all that relevant information. If it's a large housing scheme, for example, if there was a pre-app or it's of a certain scale and it's near the major sort of arterial routes in Swansea, they quite often come with an air quality assessment. So we've got some sort of level of information. So we'll assess that, and we look at that exposure characterization, looking at the thresholds, and we look at the additional guidance that sort of will lead us down to whether or not we are satisfied with the basic sort of data that's been considered, or whether, you know, we can go and ask for a bit more to be done, or we have a specific area. So we look at that sort of side on large scales, but we also look then down on the smaller sort of element of work. Case by case basis is always the way with planning. So if you had a development that was coming in near the railway, for example, you know, we would assess there, looking at air quality, looking at our modelling work that we can get from the Welsh Government's model data sets, for example, but also looking at our own tube and our own reference site networks. We've got a good indication of what the concentrations are like, and we can ask specific questions and have requirements for modelling, specific modelling work to be done. So it's all captured through those routes, but we can also comment on design phases. You know, how far, for nitrogen dioxide, for example, will decrease in concentration quicker from the roadside than particulate. So you look at the design phase. You know, are the properties fronting straight onto the road, onto the pavement? Like in the, I mentioned the Harvard again, you've got the old terrace properties there that direct onto the road. You know, that would increase the potential exposure on a busy road. So if you've got gardens and you're set back, those sort of things all help. It's trying to design out at the first stage is the first key that we look at. But yeah, we have a process, and we can condition, etc., and object if we're not happy with the information and evidence provided.
Before we go on to the next question, when you said about no gardens and building close to the road, in fact, it is in Michael and Mike's ward. There's just been some flats built on Vivian Road, and they're on the pavement, and you know, they are social housing. You know, why? You can't really answer that question. Why didn't we encourage them to build further back and just put some greenery in the front? I know it's a building line, because when you go along the road there, you've got the little cottages and things. But if we're talking about trying to do this with some form of front garden, then we didn't do very well there. And I sit on the planning committee, but I don't remember it coming to planning. It might well have just been an officer's, you know, decision.
So that particular site, we did request an air quality assessment. So we went through all that back, I try to remember, that's probably 2 or 3 years back now, if not longer. We can only work within the guidance or with reference to the guidance that we look at. So we ask for an assessment as to will this have an impact on the existing development environment and on the proposed development. So in that particular one, we've got no double windows on that front. There's mechanical ventilation so that they're not drawing air from the front, but actually the modelling that we assessed and reviewed indicated that there would be no, it would not make the situation worse with car movements. You know, the actual concentration along that road was not going to be impacted or made worse, and it was within the thresholds of the guidance document, which is what we can go against and what we can challenge. So we were at the point where actually it was demonstrated that there wouldn't be, it wouldn't make the scenario worse with that particular housing development. As far as the site layout, you know, that goes beyond something that we can have a controlling sort of aspect on. But yeah, we did assess that, and we looked at it as it came through, and we asked various questions. We required closed non-openable windows, you know, which was a noise sort of characteristic at the time as well. So impacts of the design, you know, were because of comments that came from us.
Okay, thank you. That was very interesting, actually. So now we're on to Mike Day.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, Tom and Bridget have also already touched upon the question in a sense, and I just wondered if there's a timescale for when the findings are likely to come forward, and whether there's any early indication of anything that the council may need to be doing as a result of this. Interested to hear what Bridget was saying about the app. I think that would be really welcomed. Yeah, so just really thinking in terms of timescale for getting the findings of the research, and whether there's any early indication of lessons to be learned.
Thank you, Councillor Date. So there's been a couple of projects we've done over a few years with the Welsh Government's sort of grant funding that we've applied for. I suppose some of the recent stuff, especially with Swansea University, we've looked at the behavioural change approach. And there's an element of behavioural messaging that's been developed and worked on there, and it's what's called a FEMA messaging. So it looks at fact, 4-stage approach. So it's looking at fact, evaluation, motivation, and action to try and give that information, the option and the reasons to try and get people to make a decision to change their behaviour. So we've done some work on engine idling and signage, where you just referenced there, Councillor Jones, as well, on Vivian Road, and over a short pilot study there, when we had specific messaging which were tailored around certain behaviour approaches. We had evidence, statistical significant evidence to show that yes, the numbers of people turning their engines off at the lights increased with certain messages, and we found that that led to a decrease in concentration as well. So we utilise that information in work we're doing. Swansea University then have been developing with us an air quality literacy scale. So before we've started the work which we're doing now, we needed to get a good idea of a baseline. What do people understand? What do the public know about air quality and potential impacts? Distance from the curb, for example, which route you walk, what you're breathing in, the different types of pollutants, for example. So there's work ongoing there. We've done a baseline surveys. We developed a tool which will be shared wider with colleagues across Wales, and is part and parcel of the work that's happening now with the focus group work that was just referred to. Last year, we had the Burn Alert project that we did with Swansea and Nottingham University there, and a company called Health and Wellbeing. They did a health impact assessment study for us, analysis, which sort of gave us tailoring our initial areas of interest around density of wood burner installation, for example, but then also looking at the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation indices, and looking at those sort of more deprived areas when looking at density of wood burners, for us to target sort of areas to try and test interventions. We learned a significant amount of information from that around engagement with communities. A lot of fear from people around what are the council trying to do. They want to ban this, they want to do that. And we've learned a significant amount there around how to get people interested, how to get them bought in. And one of the example stats from that Burn Alert project was through the responses from the surveys and the interaction and the alerts that we were sending, there was an indicative 702 hours of burning prevented, which is, it's a significant amount of emission that can go up through a chimney, especially when there's quite a high percentage of PM2.5 concentrations in Wales is from domestic burning and solid fuel combustion. And then the current focus then is this interface, it's this platform, this service, which I know will come into the next question as well, whereby what we're looking to do is to build up a model fed by real-time data, modelling data across the 4 local authority areas, but it's building a tool then of education, of literacy, to give people the ability to check their own areas, tailor their own alerts, to use that information in their day-to-day life, their movements, to enable them to reduce their exposure to pollutants, and then how we track that through. So this phase of the study is due to finish end of year 1 in June. We're already working up a proposal for a year 2 and 3 bid, extending that now to additional, hopefully another minimum of another 4 local authorities across Wales. We're asking through the grant processes, we're asking Welsh Government to support this work going forward for a wider, if not a whole Wales-wide solution. because it ties in with the work, or we feel it ties in with the work that Welsh Government are obviously proposing as part of the Act and the consultations. And they're raising awareness theme that they have as part of the Act as well.
Thank you very much, Tom, for a very comprehensive response. The next question comes from Sarah.
Hi, Tom. I think you've answered most of this, actually, but I will say that I've got a wood-burning stove, and because of the knowledge I've learned from you, I'm far less likely to use it now than I was. What more can council do to help residents understand how their choices like travel or home heating affect air quality?
Thank you, Councillor. I think, again, what we're intending to do by the project that we're currently running and this collaborative work, and having the psychologists at Swansea University, we've got social scientists and psychologists at Nottingham as well, and we're getting the health analysis done by Health and Wellbeing 360. What we want to use is that output, is how then we use that as Swansea Council, in collaboration with this wider platform that's being developed, but actually how we incorporate it into other areas of work and crossover work streams we have. That's the intention of doing this research work, is we're making these applications to try and do this work and obtain funding, because we can't always have all the monies available that we'd like. That's just the way of the world. But this is a source, a resource for us to apply to, and it's hopefully assisting Welsh Government as well as just as Swansea Council and its residents.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
The last question then is from Councillor Mike Day.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a relatively straightforward question in some ways. I know, following your FEMA model, facts and getting information back to residents and so on. And in paragraph 15, you talk about developing a new website, which intends to launch in the 26-27 financial year. Do you have a rough date of when that's likely to be? And I'm just thinking in terms of whether it links in with the app that was referred to earlier.
Hey, Councillor. It was delayed. So work on the new air quality website was delayed due to timing and resource constraints. We are looking at the meshing and data feeds to be reviewed, and recommence the work stream to consider a potential launch date ahead of winter 26. The current air quality data is also available on the Welsh Air Quality Forum.
So the intention of our website is it's a portal of our live data primarily, and we then would use it to signpost to other areas, to other resources, cross or cutting themes. And yes, this new platform will be sort of a definite link from this, but this is quite useful for, historically it was always used by consultants and students. They can get at the numbers, they can see the map, they can download data, they can look at it, and they can do with it what they will, if they want to graph and chart. And we'll incorporate trying to work with the schools and education and make this a resource that's available for everybody to use. But it's an information one-way sort of traffic initially, our corporate website. But yes, the plans are that it'll link in then with this wider piece of work that we're doing now.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from anybody? Well, thank you very much. I know you had to sit through a very long session previously, and it isn't the warmest in here, I'll have to admit. I brought my coat over, so I better not put it on. I'm absolutely freezing, but there we are. So thank you to the people in the room. If the rest of you will stay online for a minute, because we haven't actually finished the meeting, although it's going to be really quickly. The next item, item 9, is the work plan, which you can see we only have one meeting left, which is on the 12th of May, which is net zero 2030 emissions reporting. So we seem to be going round on a little bit of a merry-go-round. Because we normally have our pre-meeting on the Thursday, it's actually election day. So that'll be a little bit of a difficulty. And obviously they're doing the count on the Friday. So when we had the pre-meeting this time, we discussed when to have it or not, but we've decided to go for Monday, the day before the meeting, at 9 o'clock. So I hope you can join us, because it is easier if people have a lot of input to the questions, because I feel sometimes people don't engage. You do, Bridget, and if you can come to the pre-meetings, I know the same with Sarah, but we've got some members that are not engaging with us, and we wish they just come to the pre-meetings and get their questions or ask a question, but it's a work in progress. Anyway, thank you all very much for attending, and I'll see you tomorrow night in council.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, bye. Bye.
Bye.